I didn't slam any doors. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stripped the bed, our bed, piece by piece. Mattress, frame, sheets, the comforter she liked but never washed. I stacked everything I had ever brought into that house, into that room, and I left with it. No yelling, no pleading, just the quiet echo of absence where a man used to sleep. That night nobody slept. Not Caleb. Not Madison. I imagine he heard the boards creak under the weight of the bed as I pulled it apart. Maybe he watched through the slit under his door as I dragged my life back into bags. But he didn't say a word. Not even when I carried the mattress out through the front door, past the kitchen where she stood drying dishes she hadn't washed. The last time I saw Madison that night, she was staring into the sink like it held some answer she didn't want to find. She didn't ask where I was going. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she hoped I'd come back before morning, like I always did. Maybe she believed, deep down, that I'd never actually leave. That I didn't know how. But I did. Because I had been planning my departure longer than she realized. Not with bags packed or boxes labeled, not like that. My leaving began in silence. In the way Caleb stopped acknowledging me at dinner. In the way Madison started speaking around me instead of to me. In the way the house itself became colder, as if even the walls had begun rejecting the man who paid for their insulation. Started small. The first cracks always do. A slammed door. A sarcastic remark. A rolled eye when I said something that required more than a grunt in response. At first, I told myself it was just adolescence. Caleb was a teenager. They all get like that. Distant. Difficult. Entitled. They test boundaries. But what do you do when the boundaries you thought were yours start moving behind your back? 5 years. That's how long Madison and I had been married. I came into her life like a man showing up to a collapsed building with tools and 2 hands. Caleb was 12 then, old enough to remember his father, young enough to imagine he might come back. He never did. Just a few visits a year, timed conveniently around holidays or milestones. Birthdays, Christmas, graduation photos. He'd send a gift, an expensive one usually, something polished and soulless. PlayStation, a smartwatch, one time a drone, always just enough to look like love. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who bought groceries, who fixed the leaky faucet, who waited at the door during storms to make sure they made it home safe. I was the one who stood at that kitchen counter late at night, calculating how to cover the next semester of classes without sinking deeper into credit card debt. I was the one who paid for the car Caleb drove, not a fancy one, just something that worked. A used Civic, gray, with fading upholstery and a working heater. He never said thank you, never looked back as he drove it out of the driveway. But I kept showing up, kept paying, kept doing. Because I believed that was how you built something real, not with grand gestures but with quiet consistency. I believed wrong. The night Caleb said what he said, the sentence that pulled the last nail from the floorboards beneath my feet, we weren't even fighting. That's the part one can't let go of. It wasn't a moment of rage or some explosive argument. It was ordinary. He was standing in the hallway, holding a bowl of cereal. I was on my way out the door to grab takeout for dinner, his favorite, no less. Madison was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through recipes she never cooked. He stopped me in the hallway. No eye contact. Just tossed it off, like a cigarette flicked onto dry grass. You're not family, he said. You're just a guy who sleeps here. I didn't react. I didn't even blink. Because in that moment, I realized something horrifying. This wasn't new. This was just the first time he had the nerve to say it out loud. And Madison, she didn't even look up. I stood there for a long time after he walked away. Just breathing, just listening to the spoon clink against the ceramic bowl as he retreated into his room. I waited for her to say something. Anything. Correction. A defense. A scolding. A single damn word. She said nothing. That silence was worse than his sentence. You can't be betrayed by someone who never claimed you. But silence is betrayal in its purest form. I picked up the takeout menu from the counter, tore it in half and went upstairs. And that's when I started pulling apart the bed. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. Out of recognition. That bed, that mattress, those sheets, they had all belonged to me. Paid for with my hours, my labor, my sacrifices. I built comfort into a house that didn't want me in it. So I took it back. I packed everything methodically. Pillows, my shaving kit, the old flannel she used to wear when she was cold. I left that behind. I didn't want her warmth. Not anymore. And when the room was empty, stripped of everything that had made it ours, I stood in the doorway and waited for some feeling to rise. Anger, grief, nostalgia, anything. But there was nothing, because I'd already mourned the family I thought I had. The truth is, they'd been showing me who I was to them for years. Caleb, with his sneers, his contempt, his calculated distance. Madison, with her endless justifications, her passive tolerance, her refusal to ever draw a line in the sand. I was a provider, not a partner. A financial backstop, not a stepfather. A man to nod at when the bills were paid and ignore when the words cut too deep. They called it a family. But families don't watch someone bleed and stay seated. That night, I drove to a storage unit I had rented months earlier. Just in case. I told myself it was for clutter. Seasonal stuff. Leftover boxes from when we moved in. But I knew, deep down, it was my escape plan. The place I'd go when the house stopped pretending. I slept on the floor that night. Cold. Alone. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an intruder. Back at the house, I imagined Madison climbing into bed, only to find it gone. Just a frame. Just empty slats and a cold floor. I pictured Caleb waking up in the night, going to the kitchen for water, and noticing the missing shoes, the empty closet, the car not in the driveway. I wondered if he would care. I doubted it. I wondered if she would call. She didn't. And so the hours passed. Quiet, slow, brutal. A family without balance doesn't crumble. It erodes. One skipped conversation at a time. One withheld apology. One avoided confrontation. I didn't leave because Caleb didn't love me. I left because he never had to. Madison made sure of that. Her silence gave him permission. Her silence told him, "You don't have to respect him. I won't make you." And so he didn't. And now neither would I. It was a Tuesday. Rain on the roof, soft enough to disappear into the insulation. I was making dinner, pasta, garlic bread, a half-hearted salad no one would touch. Madison was upstairs, still in her office pretending to work. Caleb had said he'd be late coming home from school. I didn't ask why. I was standing at the stove, stirring the sauce, when I heard it. Not a scream, not a fight, just a voice, his voice coming from the garage. He didn't know I was home, didn't know I was only a few feet away. The door cracked just enough to let the words in. I should have turned on the exhaust fan. I should have made noise. But I didn't. I stood there, unmoving, as he laughed through the phone to someone on the other end. "He thinks he runs things," Caleb said. "But he's just some guy Mom let move in. No blood, no name. He just crashes here. He just crashes here." I watched the sauce bubble over the side of the pan. It didn't matter. I didn't wipe it up. I heard the friend on the other end laugh. A short, cruel bark. That kind of teenage laughter that tastes like dominance. Caleb laughed too. Not forced. Not hesitant. It was real. He believed it. And just like that, I understood. It wasn't just that he didn't see me as family. It was that he saw me as disposable. A man-shaped fixture that paid for Wi-Fi and groceries and maybe fixed the fence once a year, but otherwise nothing. No blood. No name. No weight. A ghost with a wallet. The worst part? He wasn't wrong. I stood in that kitchen a long time, long after he'd finished the call, slammed the garage door, and thudded back upstairs. I stirred the sauce until it scorched, burned into the bottom of the pan. Black, bitter, ruined. Madison didn't come down. Dinner sat untouched. Bread went cold. I dumped it all into the trash. That night, while they slept, peacefully, I'm sure, I began my silent withdrawal. I logged into the bank, canceled Caleb's auto insurance payment, deleted the recurring tuition transfer, disabled the credit card extension he used at gas stations and fast food joints. Froze the Venmo account he used to buy concert tickets and split pizza with friends. Each click felt like closing a door. Not in anger, in necessity. I had been carrying that boy on my back since he was 12. Every ungrateful inch, every sneer, every slammed door, every eye roll when I offered advice or set rules. I convinced myself it was normal. That one day he'd see it. One day he'd look back and realize I was there. I had been there. I never left. But people don't look back when they believe you never stood in front of them to begin with. I sat in the living room that night, in the dark, listening to the house creak with the weight of people who didn't see me. The television glowed quietly, playing something I couldn't follow. My eyes were open, but I didn't blink. I didn't sleep. At 2:14 a.m., I packed my bags. This time more than just the mattress. Clothes, books, paperwork, my shaving mirror, the tools I kept in the garage that Caleb never used but always moved. I left the TV. I left the couch. I left the coffee machine she loved but never cleaned. But I took the keys, the ones I duplicated in secret. One for the storage unit, one for the apartment. A week earlier, I had signed a short-term lease on a small one-bedroom on the edge of town. No backyard, no fence. Just a second-floor unit with dusty blinds and carpet that smelled like someone else's regrets. It had taken me 30 minutes to sign the paperwork. 10 years to make the decision. I didn't tell Madison. I didn't owe her that. By sunrise, I was gone. I didn't leave a note. I didn't take my phone. I turned it off and left it on the dresser. A small, quiet surrender of the only lifeline they had left to reach me. They didn't call that morning. Maybe they thought I'd just gone out for a walk. Maybe they didn't notice I hadn't made coffee, hadn't turned on the news, hadn't opened the curtains. Or maybe, and this is what I've come to believe, maybe they were relieved. At the new place, I unpacked slowly. One box at a time. One item at a time. It didn't take long. I hadn't taken much. I sat on the floor for hours, staring at the blank walls. No family pictures. No noise. No passive-aggressive silences. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional dog barking in the distance. It was small. It was nothing. But it was mine. There was no one to mock me there. No one to talk over me. No one to make eye contact with Madison before deciding whether or not to listen to me. No one to treat me like a temporary roommate in the house I paid for. I left them the furniture, the fridge, the good towels, the flat screen, the sense of stability, the illusion of structure. But I took the peace. I had spent years thinking that sacrifice was the currency of love. That if I just gave enough, paid enough, stayed quiet enough, they'd see me. They'd choose me. They'd respect me. I thought I could earn my way into their family. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. But families aren't built on sacrifice. They're built on recognition. And no one in that house recognized me. They knew what I provided. But they never valued who I was. 3 days passed. No word. No messages. No missed calls. It was like I had never been there at all. And maybe, to them, I hadn't. Maybe I was just a presence. A sponsor. A bed warmer. A second income. I sat with that. Let it rot in the middle of the room like a dead animal no one would claim. I didn't sweep it away. I needed to see it rot. On the third night, there was a knock at the door. Not loud. Not frantic. Just a rhythm I recognized too well. I opened it slowly. Madison stood on the threshold. Jacket pulled tight against her ribs. Hair damp from the rain. Her eyes were red. Her face pale. In her hands, she held nothing. Not a bag. Not an apology. Not a promise. She looked like a woman who had walked through a fire and realized too late that she had been the one holding the match. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. I didn't answer. Just moved aside and let her in. She stepped inside like someone entering a graveyard. Every breath she took echoed off the empty walls. She didn't sit. Didn't speak. Just looked around, absorbing the emptiness I had built for myself. Then she turned to me and said the one thing I didn't expect to hear. "He can't sleep. Neither can I. The house. It's different now. It's wrong." Her voice cracked. "You were the anchor, and we didn't realize it until you left." I still didn't speak. I just listened. It was all I had done for years. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. No makeup, no defense. Just skin and salt and silence. I didn't stop him, she said. I didn't defend you. I thought he'd grow out of it. I thought it was just rebellion. I nodded. Not because I forgave her, but because she was right. I didn't see how much of the weight you were carrying until you weren't there to carry it anymore. Another silence. Deeper this time. I offered her tea. She said no. She didn't stay long. Didn't ask to. She left the way she came. Quiet, soaked, empty-handed. I stood in the doorway for a long time after she left, watching the parking lot, watching the rain. A week later, a text came. From Caleb. Just one line. I was wrong. You did more for me than my real dad ever did. No sarcasm. No posturing. No LOL at the end. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for anything. He asked for a meeting. I said yes. We met at a diner near campus. Neutral ground. We sat across from each other in a booth that smelled like burnt coffee and stale syrup. He didn't make excuses. Didn't pretend he hadn't said what he said. He said, I was angry. I thought you were just trying to control me. I didn't realize. I didn't see it. I nodded. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, he said. But I'd like to start over. Not with money. Not with stuff. Just with respect. I looked him in the eye for the first time in what felt like years. And I said, that's all I ever wanted. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We finished our coffee in silence. But something had shifted. Not enough to move back. Not enough to call him son. But enough to rebuild. Brick by brick. On new terms. I didn't go back. Not even after the apology. Not even after the meeting at the diner. Caleb asked. Madison asked. I said no. I'm not a fixture, I told her on the phone. I'm not a convenience that returns just because the furniture feels off without me. She cried quietly on the other end. But she didn't argue. And that was progress in its own hollow way. In the weeks that followed, things didn't fall apart quickly. They eroded, like limestone under water. Like a rope fraying, strand by strand. Madison tried to hold it together. Tried to keep up appearances. She posted pictures online. Smiling ones, with Caleb standing next to her like he hadn't torn the foundation out from under his own roof. Family dinners with just 2 plates. Photos at the farmer's market. The captions got longer. The hashtags more desperate. But the eyes told the truth. The house didn't feel right without me. Not because I was lovable. Not because I brought joy. But because I had been the weight that kept everything from floating away. You don't notice the anchor until the boat starts drifting. I still paid for the mortgage. I didn't cancel the utilities. I left the lights on, the gas running, the fridge humming. But I stopped being reachable. I stopped answering every little request. Madison would text about the lawn guy. Did you reschedule him? And I wouldn't respond. Caleb would ask about the expired tags on his car. Should I renew? And I'd leave it on read. Because I wasn't their secretary. I wasn't their handler. I wasn't the man behind the curtain keeping their lives stitched together. Not anymore. I watched, from a distance, as cracks began to show. Caleb got a parking ticket. Then another. Then a notice from the DMV. He called in a panic, voice sharp with urgency. I listened to the voicemail twice before deleting it. The boy who had once said I was just a guy who sleeps here now needed my signature to keep driving the car I had bought. But I didn't rush to fix it. I let him sit with the consequences. Madison's hours got cut at work. She texted once, just a heads up, things are tight this month. No question, no plea, just a hint, like smoke curling under a locked door. I didn't respond. They had made it clear. I was not family. I was just a man who slept there. A man who paid and stayed quiet. So now I was quiet. And they were learning what that silence really cost. The truth is, the financial support had always been the surface tension. What lay beneath it was more corrosive. The emotional scaffolding I had built around both of them. The late-night talks with Caleb after failed tests. The way I'd run interference between Madison and her endless anxiety spirals. The emotional labor, the steadiness, the listening, the restraint. Now it was gone. And they didn't know how to fill the vacuum. 2 months passed. Then 3. I saw Madison once during that time by accident at the grocery store. She was holding a basket instead of a cart. I knew what that meant. Essentials only. She used to fill 2 carts, overflowing with organic this and gluten-free that. Now she held her wallet in her hand like she was counting every cent. We locked eyes across the aisle. She gave me a look I couldn't read. Not anger, not pleading, just exhaustion. I nodded. She nodded back. Neither of us spoke. She didn't follow me out. That night, she texted, "I don't blame you." I sat with that message for a long time. I reread it a dozen times, trying to find the lie in it. There wasn't one. And that scared me more than if she'd begged. Because guilt was easy to carry. It gave me purpose. But indifference, that was a void. Caleb's messages shifted, too. Less panic, more reflection. He started asking questions, real ones. About money, about credit, about budgeting. He said, "I didn't understand what you were doing for me until I had to do it for myself." He said, "Mom's struggling." He said, "I'm trying." The truth is, I believed him. But I didn't help. Because this slow unraveling was what respect looks like when it's finally demanded. Not with lectures. Not with ultimatums. But with absence. Let them sit in the hollow I once filled. Let them touch the walls and feel the cold air creeping in. Let them learn what I learned long ago. You cannot teach gratitude to someone who has never had to live without the thing they took for granted. So I watched as Madison began selling off pieces of the house. A table here, an old armchair there, things I had picked out, assembled, paid for. I saw the listings online. I recognized my handwriting on the instruction manuals she photographed for buyers. She listed the guest room bed last, the one I used when we first got married. Back when she said she needed time to get Caleb used to me. That time had lasted almost 2 years. 2 years of sleeping alone in a room filled with boxes, waiting for a boy to give his mother permission to love me fully. Now it was gone. That night she called. First time in over a month. "I didn't expect you to answer," she said. I said nothing. There was a long pause. "I sold the bed. I thought you should know." I waited. He asked me why we ever kept it so long. I didn't have an answer. Another pause. Heavier this time. "Things are hard, Michael. I know you don't want to hear that. I know it's not your problem anymore. But I wanted to tell you." Still, I stayed silent. "I'm not asking for help," she added quickly. "I'm just trying to be honest. We didn't see it. Everything you were doing. Everything you were holding." And then the quiet thing. The thing she had never said, not once, not in all those years. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Not yet. Because the apology wasn't for me. It was for her. For her conscience. For her guilt. And guilt isn't the same as change. The phone line went dead. I didn't call back. A week later, Caleb asked to meet again. I almost said no. But curiosity won. Not hope. Just the cold need to witness the aftermath. We met at the same diner. Same booth. Different boy. He looked tired. Older. Like someone who'd finally been asked to carry something. "I took a job," he said. "Part-time. It's not much, but..." He didn't finish. I nodded. "I used to think you were just some guy trying to control everything. But now I get it. You were building something, even when we didn't see it." He looked up at me. "I still don't expect anything. I know I said some things I can't take back. But I wanted you to know I'm not the same. Not completely." And for the first time I believed him. Not because he sounded convincing, but because he sounded tired. Real tired. The kind you earn. I paid the check. He said thank you. For the meal. For the time. For listening. It was the first real thank you I'd heard from him since he was 12. I walked out into the cold evening air, not feeling triumphant. Not feeling vindicated. Just clean. Like I'd finally set something down after carrying it too long. That night, I sat in the apartment, lights off, windows open. The sounds of traffic floated up from the street. Someone downstairs was arguing with their dog. Somewhere nearby, a woman was singing to herself, off-key and beautiful. I let the night hold me. I thought about Madison. I thought about Caleb. And I thought about what it means to be a man in a house that only sees you as a function. I had been the money, the stability, the quiet support, the assumed presence. And when I stepped away, the house began to groan. They thought I was the roof. They didn't realize I was the foundation. We're not under the same roof anymore. That house, the one I used to keep standing with invisible hands, it still stands. But not because of me, because of the echo I left behind. Caleb works now. 2 part-time jobs, last I heard. Fast food during the week, warehouse on weekends. He texts sometimes. Short messages. Honest ones. Rough week. Just paid off the tire bill. Thinking about school again. No entitlement. No sarcasm. No pretense. He never calls me Dad. I don't need him to. Madison and I see each other less. When we do, it's strained. She smiles too quickly, talks too fast. Like she's afraid the silence might tell more truth than she's ready to hear. She once asked if I'd ever come back. Not to the house, to them. I told her I already had. I came back the moment they realized I'd left. That's what absence does. Teaches. You can pour yourself into a home until your bones rattle, until your hands go numb from holding everything up. But if no one sees you, really sees you, then all you've done is die in the quiet. I stopped dying the day I walked out. Now, when I visit, it's different. I knock. Caleb answers the door like it means something. He offers me a chair. He pours the coffee. Once, he even asked how work was going. That's what respect looks like. Not flowers. Not apologies. Just the small shift. The weight of acknowledgement. We're not a family in the way people like to frame it. No matching sweaters. No Sunday brunches. But there's something honest between us now. Not love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But truth. And truth, I've learned, is a better glue than obligation. The old me would have rushed back. Would have filled the gaps. Paid the debts. Softened the lessons. But that man's gone. Buried beneath years of being ignored in his own house. This version, he stands outside the door, waits to be let in, and never brings the whole world on his back. And you reading this, maybe you've carried what wasn't yours. Maybe you've fed mouths that mocked you, stayed for people who called you a placeholder. So let me ask you, when your love becomes invisible, when your voice becomes background noise, when your worth is measured only in what you give, what would you do? Would you stay, or would you finally walk out? And let the silence teach them what your presence was worth. Tell me, was I wrong?